can't be a baby. No, you can't do it. No. No, you can't do it. I know. Oh my God, I know.
Ow! Hello everyone and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so sorry it's been so long since I filmed, but this case has taken so much of my time with research and I truly want to do this case justice. It is very complex and it hits a little bit closer to home for me because I actually know friends and acquaintances of this person, and that is the case of Kortne Stouffer. She went missing almost 7 years ago on July 29th, 2012 from Palmyra, Pennsylvania. And I'm going to be covering the case as well as some theories that I've seen online, that I've seen via television, that I've heard from my friends, and I hope that you will stick with me to the end. If you enjoy cases like these, missing persons cases, murder cases, crime cases, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join me every week for cases just like this. I enjoy making these videos, but it is pointless to put them out there if it is not reaching a broad spectrum of people. So let's get started. 21-year-old Kortne Sierra Stouffer went missing in the very early morning of Sunday, July 29th, 2012 from Palmyra, Pennsylvania. According to Kortne's parents, she loved to be the center of attention. She was girly, she liked to have fun, she liked to dress up, but she also loved animals, she loved to roughhouse with the guys, she loved to go fishing, so she was just your all-around, well-rounded girl, and she just loved to have fun. As she moved from her teenage years to her early adult years, she was kind of turning into what her parents and her friends call a hippie or a flower child. She loved listening to reggae music, and she had a tattoo that says One Love. So she was really coming into her own right around the time that she went missing. At 20 years old, she began dating 19-year-old Bradley Hare, and after 9 months of dating, they moved in together into a new apartment in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, where they took along her childhood dog, Sheba. She loved this dog so much, and she was so excited to give it a home of her own. In fact, she loved animals so much that she became a dog groomer, and this was now her full-time profession. On the evening of Saturday, July 28th, Kortne had actually been hosting a house party. And in the short time that she had lived at this apartment, she actually had developed sort of a bad relationship with some of her neighbors. Kortne was loud, she liked to have fun, she was young, and that's what young people do. And so this was a sort of smaller, more rural, quiet community with a lot of older couples, and for that reason, they did not necessarily take a liking to all of the partying and the loud behavior. On this evening, one of her neighbors actually called the police department because the noise was so loud, the party was getting out of hand, and they knew that her boyfriend, Bradley, was on probation for underage drinking. And when the police showed up, they arrested him because he was violating his parole. Obviously, Kortne was very upset. She was panicked. She thought that this meant that he was going to be serving the rest of his parole in Lebanon County Jail, and she was very upset about this. Her mother reports receiving a phone call at approximately 9:54 p.m. that evening where Kortne was panicked. She was distraught, very upset, crying, angry. Her mother actually offered for her to come over to her home and sort of just relax with her, and she declined and instead went out with some friends, and the first person she reached out to was Cody Pruitt. Her father was very surprised to hear this because he did not even know that Cody and Kortne were friends, so when he found out that she had gone out with Cody that evening, he was very surprised. They first met at the gas station, which is a bar/restaurant in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania. I actually think it's no longer there, but it is about, I don't know, a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute drive from her Palmyra apartment, given traffic, to the gas station. She met Cody Pruitt there. Cat's driving me nuts. Along with Cody, she met Milton Rodriguez and another couple. These were friends of Cody's. To my understanding, they were not her friends. They were just all going to hang out that evening together. A short while later, they all piled into Milton Rodriguez's car and they left to go to downtown Harrisburg, 2nd Street specifically, to go to the hardware bar. Now, downtown Harrisburg is known to be sort of the place to go if you're going out. I've heard many of my friends say before, oh, we're going to Harrisburg, we're going bar hopping in Harrisburg, we're going to downtown Harrisburg. So this is definitely a place where people go to drink. Witnesses say that Kortne was heavily drinking that evening, that she was very intoxicated. They also state that she got into a verbal altercation with an acquaintance of hers. This was a man and his girlfriend, and this was a man that by no means was she friends with, and she was accusing him of stealing money from her apartment, breaking in and stealing money from her apartment. The altercation got so out of hand and so loud that Kortne was actually thrown out of the bar. Now, her father makes it a point to bring to our attention that when she was thrown out of the bar, her friends did not go with her. She was thrown out by herself, and she actually had to text them to come out, and she was ready to go. She had driven with them, so she had to text them and ask them to come out of the bar so they could leave. Now, sometime around 2:30 in the morning, Cody, Milton, this other couple, and Kortne get into Milton's car, and Cody is the one driving, and he drives them back to the gas station so that Kortne can get her car. He first drops off Milton at his home and then takes Kortne to get her car. Now, according to Cody, he followed Kortne in her vehicle with Milton's car back to her apartment in Palmyra. Now, her dad wants to be very clear that for some time Cody had a crush on Kortne, but to his knowledge this was not reciprocated and there was no romantic relationship going on between the two of them. A little after 3 o'clock in the morning, Cody and Kortne arrive back at her apartment, and she sees one of her neighbors standing outside, and she becomes visibly enraged. She starts verbally attacking him, accusing him of calling the cops, because to her, this is who is responsible for putting her boyfriend in jail. This is the same man that she truly did not get along with. Her parents were aware that she didn't get along with him, and this was a man that she called weird, creepy, and had actually called her mom and accused him of videotaping her outside. When this happened, her mom said, well, just go inside, ignore him, try to, pretend he's not there, don't engage with him. But Kortne called him creepy and did not like to be around him. And at this point, she was enraged and was verbally attacking him. When Kortne began lashing out at the neighbors, one of them called the police. And I don't think that this is the man that she was specifically, accusing of calling the cops. I think this is another neighbor who called the police when they heard it get loud outside again. And so the cop shows up and says to all of them, go inside. This is the second time I've been out here. Go inside. We do not want to respond again. And if we have to respond again, somebody is going to jail tonight. The police report basically states that everybody at the scene had been drinking and that it had gotten loud. He had sent them all home. And that's pretty much the extent. For this police officer, this was just another routine call to what was a verbal altercation. So Cody takes Kortne back to her apartment, and this is presumed to be the end of the event. But at approximately 4 o'clock in the morning, the police receive another call from one of her neighbors. And I will read to you exactly what the neighbor says to the 911 dispatcher. The neighbor says she's upstairs screaming, hollering, and banging on the floors and stomping. I can hear him on my side. I'm done. So the police are called because there are loud banging noises and yelling coming from Kortne's apartment. So for the third time, the police respond to Kortne's apartment, but this time when they get there, they arrive to a completely quiet residence. There's no yelling, there's no noises, it is just quiet. The police knock on Kortne's door and it is completely quiet. They hear no noises, and for the cop, they assume that this means that Kortne has finally settled down, she's finally gone to bed, and that this is the end of whatever was going on. Even the private investigator hired for this case says, why kick the bee's nest? The police department has faced a lot of backlash regarding this specific incident where they do not go into her apartment, but even her private investigator for this case states, why kick the bee's nest? Most cops would assume that this was just Kortne going to bed, that she was drunk, she'd finally fallen asleep. The following day was a Monday, and Kortne was expected to meet her brother at the Lebanon County Fair. And the fair is actually going on right now, and it is definitely an event that draws in a large portion of the population from Lebanon County, and this was actually a tradition for Kortne and her family to go to the fair. She had shown animals for 4-H at the fair, and this was something that she was looking forward to, and her brother knew that she would be there. She never showed up, and this was the first red flag in a number of red flags when Kortne went missing. The following day, she would not answer the phone for her mom. She wouldn't answer her text messages, and she wouldn't answer her phone calls. And so her mother then called her brother, said, "Hey, did you see your sister last night at the fair?" And he said, "No, she never showed up." And this is when Kortne's mom knew something was very, very wrong, and she went to her apartment. Her mother says that when she arrived to Kortne's apartment, her car was parked outside with all of the windows rolled down. She thought this was unusual, but she knew that this was not, completely uncharacteristic, that her daughter could have come home from a party, could have left the windows rolled down. It wasn't that big of a deal until she went inside. The porch light was on, the air conditioner was on, the door was unlocked, Kortne's shoes were in the house, and her cell phone was by her bed with a number of missed calls. She knew that something was severely wrong when she saw that Sheba, Kortne's dog, had messed on the floor, because this was very uncharacteristic for this dog, and that had meant that nobody had let the dog out for quite some time. Kortne's mom immediately calls her ex-husband, Kortne's father, and they begin reaching out to everyone. Friends, mutual friends, family, acquaintances, anybody who they can possibly think of, and nobody has heard from Kortne. After going through Kortne's phone, her father sees that she had last communicated with Cody Pruitt, so he reaches out to Cody, and Cody begins to recount for him exactly what had happened the evening before. Cody tells him about going out, what had happened at the bar. He also tells her father that after the police showed up when Kortne was verbally attacking the neighbors, he took Kortne back to the apartment, and she began to get even louder, stomping on the floors, yelling. She was very aggravated. However, when they realized that the cops had been called again, they turned off all the lights. Cody says he went to bed, and when he woke up in the morning, Kortne was not there. He says that he woke up to get ready to go to work at the racetrack where he worked full time. He yelled for Kortne a couple times. He didn't hear from her, and he says he left. He went to a local convenience store to pick up something, likely breakfast, I would assume, and he called Milton Rodriguez while he was there. He needed to drop off his vehicle because he still had Milton's car, and he texted Kortne a couple of times to ask where she was, and to make sure that she was okay. This information regarding him calling Milton and texting Kortne has been verified via security footage at the convenience store. Kortne's parents called the Palmyra Police Department that afternoon, and they requested that they come in the following day to fill out a missing persons report. And this is, if you're familiar with missing persons cases, this is pretty customary, where they ask the family to wait a 24-hour period, because when young adults go missing, most of the time it's likely that they have been out drinking, they're with their friends, they just haven't gotten back to their parents, and so they ask them to come in the following day to fill out a police report. So the following day, when the missing persons report is filed, they take immediate action. And I am actually really proud to say that a local community, a small community, took such extreme action right off the bat. So immediately they reach out to the Lebanon County District Attorney's Office, because they know they do not have the resources to handle a case like this. The police go to her apartment. They declare it a crime scene given the fact that she is missing, and they process it numerous times with a canine unit, with multiple law enforcement agencies, and they find nothing. They find zero evidence of any kind of forced entry into her apartment, and they find nothing to indicate that anything happened any foul play happened in her apartment. They interviewed the neighbors and they gained no new insights. They spoke with the couple that lived beneath her, and they stated that they did indeed hear the loud aftermath when the police left, that she was indeed loud, stomping, hollering, causing a scene. However, they said when she fell silent, they just assumed that this meant that she had finally gone to sleep and that the event was over.
You like a spaghetti? Love you. Love you. Thank you. You love me too.
Kortne's parents report that the entire time they were at her apartment, as well as when the police were at her apartment, that this individual, this neighbor that Kortne had claimed to feel uncomfortable around, had claimed to have been videotaping her, had claimed to be creepy, was just acting strange. He would not make eye contact with anybody. He kept staring at them the entire time. And so this made her mother very uncomfortable and very suspicious. Her mother actually tells the police that this incidents of videotaping had occurred about 1 week prior to her going missing, and the neighbor denies to the police that this ever happened. The police were actually able to uncover a voicemail left for the landlord by the neighbor the evening that Kortne actually went missing, and this voicemail was, according to her mother, pretty disturbing. Stated that he was over Kortne, he wanted her out of the apartment, and if she wasn't going to do something about it, he was. More disturbing to her parents were the numerous trash bags that this man removed from his apartment while they were at Kortne's apartment processing it. So the parents state that while they were there, waiting to hear about what happened to Kortne, waiting for any new evidence, they see him leaving his apartment with numerous trash bags, black trash bags, only partially full, and that he would put them in his trunk, he would leave, he would come back, and he would do the exact same thing. Her mother states that this happened at least 6 times, where he would bring out small trash bags, half full, from his apartment, put them in his car, leave, come back, and do this again. And she said this happened about 6 times. Now, the police say that they have thoroughly investigated him. They have thoroughly checked his apartment. They've even gone through it with cadaver dogs, and they have found 0 evidence that something happened in his apartment. Though this neighbor does claim to have had a pretty hostile relationship with Kortne and to not particularly like her as a person, he does maintain that he had 0 involvement in her disappearance. The family passed out flyers. They did innumerable interviews with local and national news stations. They held a candlelight vigil outside of the police department, and still they have heard nothing that has actually led to any sort of viable evidence as to what happened to Kortne. The local volunteer fire department in Palmyra organized a ground search for Kortne, and they had so many people show up to volunteer to search for her that they literally had to turn people away because there weren't enough places to actually search. And while some people have been upset about this, they were upset that they got turned away, please understand that at some point you have to make sure that you are maintaining evidence and that you are not compromising evidence should it be found with the number of people searching. And I am just so proud to be part of a community that many people care, that many people wanted to help. And for many people, it was as if their own daughter was missing. I think a lot of people looked at it as, if this were my daughter, I would want, people to show up and to care. And so I'm so proud to be part of a community that really, put in the effort to find her. Unfortunately, not one piece of evidence was found. The police begin to look at potential suspects. They take a harder look at certain individuals who could have had a hand in her disappearance. Bradley, her boyfriend, has probably the most solid alibi of anybody in this case. He had been arrested, and despite the fact that they know he had nothing to do with her disappearance, he has, via what the police have said, been pretty uncooperative. You all right? Due to his history of, minor offenses and breaking the law, he has probably a very ill portrait of the police and law enforcement, so this could have something to do with why he has been pretty uncooperative. Cody's account of what happened the night she went missing has never changed, and many people have pointed the finger at him, and I do believe that it is odd. The whole story is odd, but it does say something that his story has never changed, not once. He maintains that he has no idea how she went missing or where she went. Her father maintains that it is very hard for him to believe that he was in the home with her, he had fallen asleep very close to her, and that somehow when he woke up, he's just such a hard sleeper that he has no idea what happened to her. I too find it difficult to believe that he fell asleep in this apartment, which was not very big, slept very close to where she was supposedly sleeping, and yet he has zero account for what happened to her that night. Police did search the cars and the homes of Cody Pruitt and Milton Rodriguez. Both maintain they don't know what happened to her, and no evidence was found in any of those searches. Police begin to uncover more about the man that Kortne got into a verbal altercation with at the hardware bar in Harrisburg. And according to Kortne's mom, this man was a known drug dealer, and Kortne had been known to smoke weed. This was not, a secret to her parents, to her friends, to her family. People knew this. Her father says that she could have been involved in harder drugs, but he was not aware of them. The police and her parents fear, though, that her involvement in, this sort of lifestyle, this partying and this drug use could have led to her ultimate demise. Her father did say that she had begun to hang out with some friends that he did not approve of and that he was warning her could be trouble. In March of 2014, a local resident, Amanda Ballister, comes to the police stating that she overheard a conversation where it was discussed how Kortne went missing, and the conversation pretty much stated that two men showed up to Kortne's house, wanting to rob her for marijuana, for money, and that they had ended up killing her, rolling her body up in a carpet, and dumping her at Memorial Lake. And Memorial Lake is a pretty big lake. It's stationed in the middle of a pretty rural area. The PA State Police searched the area, they searched the lake, they did a water search and found nothing. Now, it states in the sources that I can find that they spent 5 hours searching, and I'm not an expert, but Memorial Lake is pretty big to be searching it for 5 hours and truly state that you have any conclusive evidence. I sound like I'm being a jerk when I say that. I'm not an expert. I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's a pretty short amount of time to spend searching. Now, in the following spring, a volunteer diver actually did go and search again. Both of these searches revealed nothing and no evidence was found. Leah Jennings, a private investigator, was hired in 2015. She continues to work on the case, and the case remains open. The real tragedy about this case is that there is zero evidence. There is nothing to point investigators in any one particular direction. I've seen in Reddit and I've seen in forums online, Web Sleuth, that people assume that this should be an easy case, that, oh, it's the neighbor. How could you not know it's the neighbor? He was creepy to begin with. Or, oh, it was, Cody that spent the evening with her and claims to know nothing. But there's no hard physical evidence anywhere to suggest what happened to her. There's no evidence in her apartment. There's no evidence in the neighbor's apartment. There's no evidence at Cody's home, in her car, in Milton Rodriguez's car. There's no evidence in Cody's car. And sure, there's circumstantial evidence. There's stories that could point in one direction or another, but there's no hard evidence to say, yes, this individual did it, or yes, she is no longer alive. We don't know. I mean, human trafficking is such a huge problem in this country that people just neglect to truly see. And could she still be alive out there? Absolutely. There is no evidence to suggest that she was taken from her home in a violent manner. Did she leave her apartment thinking she was leaving with a friend and something ultimately happened to her after she left? And it's so, I feel so much for her family. because I remember when this happened. I remember I was in college. I would think I was a sophomore in college. And it was just so unbelievable. This is such a small town. It was so unbelievable that a mutual, you know, friend of a friend could have just dropped off the face of the earth and no one knows what happened to her. I truly want to hear your theories. I want to know, you know, if you have any ideas about what could have happened to her. I will leave the number for the Lebanon County District Attorney's Office, the Lebanon County Crime Stoppers, and I will also leave the number for the Palmyra Police Department, as well as the private investigator Leah Jennings. She has been very pivotal in this case, uncovering evidence and doing interviews, because people are more likely to talk to her. She's not part of the quote-unquote criminal justice system. But I just encourage you, if you know anything about this case, if you know anything about what happened to Kortne, come forward. Nothing is going to be uncovered at this point unless somebody comes forward.